Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel at NDN TV Nigeria. Click on the subscribe button and be the first to get notifications.
The world is evolving and science is developing. And once science develops, so people start thinking that, okay, instead of crossing all the time, and then we are looking for a particular gene, why can't we develop? So luckily for some scientists, they were able to develop what we call genetic engineering. Genetic engineering or through biotechnology. So in this biotechnology is that it's a tool to fast track breeding, because our modern breeding, especially like for instance rice, in most cases if you are doing conventional breeding you cannot go beyond 5 tons. If you are doing maize, you cannot go beyond certain yield limit. It shows that our yield has reached a plateau. Then they now look at how can we do. So the scientists start walking around. Okay, how can we increase the sink? That is where this thing. So they now found some genes in another plant because of their genomic distance. So we cannot cross them. So you have to use the techniques. We now transfer that gene into that particular plant. So from there you see that the plant has increased in yield. It's just a gene transfer to improve the quality of a particular crop. There's no problem in it. So that is where the scenario of GMO comes in. GMO comes in to give us a relief. For instance, BT cotton, if you go to Kano now, or Kaduna, in all part of Nigeria, or even all part of West Africa, who is growing cotton, BT cotton is the major cotton they are producing. One, because those days, the cottons are not weed resistant. So through bacteria, they were able to find that there are some bacteria that are weed resistant. So they remove that gene and transfer it to the gene of cotton. And that cotton become stable and resistant and producing very well. So one thing is that we thank God that in Nigeria we have a board for biotechnology who monitor all these things. When you are doing a transgenic plant, you go through many processes. You develop, after you develop it, you incubate them, you take them to the screen house for hardening, and that place is well serene that nothing can happen to it. Then you keep on testing the materials you have developed. For instance, if I develop rice, transgenic rice, it's not that I'll just carry it out and give it to farmers. It's not. The board, control boards, they have to see the processes I'm taking to do the transgenic plant. So after that, if I develop the seedlings, I take it to the screen house, and the screen house there is serene. It's very well tight to monitor how it performs. Then I evaluate. After the evaluation, I harvest, I test. So before even giving it to the farmers, it will even take more than 4 or 5 years before it gets to the farmers, because you have to do genotype by environment interaction, and also the genotype by environment interaction. How they interact with the environment. Are they stable? Are they stable? You know, a gene can. If one thing that people have the apprehension is that the gene can jump into human body. It doesn't jump. Now, the concern that it can, for biodiversity, or it can give for the environment. You see, before you can, after you finish your transgenic processes, the chemicals are well disposed. But I know that they are very little, but they are well disposed. And again, they doesn't take it to outside where it can cause diversity or environmental degradation. It cannot. And I thank God that most of our research institutes now, they are now using, they are now through AATF, they are now developing a GMO cassava, GMO maize, and a GMO cowpea. You know, just of recent, my colleague, Professor Ishaku, he developed a GMO cowpea, and again the yield of that cowpea is higher than any other variety. Biotechnology is a tool for breeders to use. Instead of me to be screening 1 million this thing, I can just look at the DNA, extract the DNA, look at the gel, the gel and the gene. I say, okay, if you go to plant number 5, it carries that gene. You just go there and go and uproot it. You will scrape thousands of lines. Instead of going there one by one, recording, then you start analyzing to see how it is. We have advanced. To label is not necessary. That is one thing, because GMO is of different dimension. GMO can be for wheat, it can be for diseases resistant, it can be for many other qualities. When we look at the economic benefits of GMO, we know that it's far outweigh what we are thinking. No region that does not need GMO, because breeders are working hard with molecular biologists and to develop and to improve the productivity of agriculture and for food security. GMO is just ordinary way. It's just a modified form of transferring gene. Nobody should be afraid that the gene will jump from your stomach, or you combine from your food that combine with your own gene, or even it doesn't. What we need to do is to equip our biotechnology lab. So these transgenic engineering tools will be there. If they are there, when we developed it, there will be scientists there who continuously multiplying that materials. When they multiply the materials, the seed companies will go there and buy. We are not being enslaved by any international organization. It's for us to develop. We have a competent hand to develop that materials, and then when we develop it, then the seed companies will be going there and be buying. So any farmer who likes it can go there and buy.
Genetically modified organisms are organisms. Could be plants, could be animals, could be microorganisms, whose genetic material, that is the structure for heredity, has been altered or modified in such a way that it is expected to yield or give what the person who has modified it wants it to give or yield. Yes, not natural, not necessarily what the original organism would have yielded. Nature takes its time. It creates, it evaluates what it has produced. It subjects it to time. It subjects it to interaction with other organisms. At the end of the day, if it is not very good, it dies off. If it's very good, it continues, and it has been selected by nature. But in this particular case, when you take one gene from one source and put it in another source, the tendency is that where you put it, the recipient will have product of that gene, expression of that gene. Expression of the gene is in terms of its product. So the expression of that gene is what it produces, and then you now see that new product inside that, where the recipient organism or the host. In most cases, you don't expect to have any problem from it. But where there could be an issue is if there is an additive situation where a product of a gene interacts with another product of another gene in the host organism, creating something that was not planned, that was not intended. Okay, and these are the possible sources of error, maybe in future, for GMOs. But you see, people are afraid of these things because they are possible, not necessarily because they have sinned. And that calls for the safety concern. In all of this, the most important thing is the sincerity in these GMOs. You see, sometimes, not sometimes, the process of producing a GMO is the same process of producing an organism for biological warfare. You can take a good gene and put it in an organism to make it better. You can also take a bad gene and put it in an organism to make it vicious. That is where the honesty, the sincerity of purpose comes to play. It's not that GMO is not good. It's very good. I encourage, GMOs in the sense that is a way to combat hunger, produce more food. That's a way to produce raw materials for the industry. That's a way to produce a whole lot of things for the good of man. GMO is a very important development in biotechnology. But the sincerity behind, the target, and that is a major, if you people every time you see, most of the time you hear people say conspiracy theory. It's not just conspiracy theory. People want to know the truth. If there is enough research data to support any claim, then it is acceptable. You produce a genetically modified organism, and then you pass it through confined field trials. Confined field trial is where you try it out in a field in a way that it will not exchange any genetic material with any other plants around, maybe through pollination or introgression or other things, for sort of some other forms of recombination. Once you do it consistently for generations, and you see that what you have is safe, there's no harm in bringing it into the market. But where you don't have sufficient research data, where there is some element of doubt, where there's something that's not very clear, then that is where it becomes a problem. So there is need to be very careful, to be sincere about this, to do enough research trials, to have enough research data. And what the problem with that is, most people want funds. In the third world, there is no research fund, little or none. For you to get funds to do your research, it's like passing a camel through the eye of a needle. Seeds have the natural tendency to be viable. One is produced and it does not germinate, produces that germinate, or does not regrow another generation, depends on the circumstances of the genetic modification. If it affected its viability, if it affected its fertility. Supposing there are plants that secrete biochemicals into the soil. Some of them are for ecological purposes. Sometimes some plants, for instance, secrete some toxins that discourage other plants from growing around it. Not its own type, but other ones. Some grasses are known to do that. While some release the ones that discourage its own kind to grow around it. Now, it depends on the way nature has placed it and the way scientists also, as an individual, needing GMO or not needing GMO depends on what you want. If we want more food, then we can look for GMO that serves that purpose safely. But if we have our good soil producing good food, if youths are properly deployed, some to go into farming, some to go into small scale, medium scale farming, even processing and all of that, and you have farmers actually producing enough, would we really look for any GMO? We wouldn't. If the environment is good for our fish to grow and do well, we don't need genetically modified fish or genetically improved fish. And if we are conscious of our environment, we are conscious of our health, we are conscious of our economy, then we go for what we need. Not necessarily because people say it is good, then you jump at it. You know that in the world now, there is promotion of organic food. Organic food is food produced without fertilizers, artificial fertilizers, without application of herbicides. So basically, if we have an environment that can give us what we need without artificial support, organic farming is the best. It's healthy. It gives you balanced diet. It gives you enough nutrition. It gives you, a healthy environment. I have also read something that said, that this GMO, that it causes cancer. It does this, it does that, it does this. Cancer, every human being, every human cell has a gene called oncogene that can mutate and lead to, ignite the process of tumor formation. The cells break into the bloodstream and then, some of those tissues, and then transportation tissues, and then moved out of that location. That's when it says metastasized, and then you'll be having cancer, growth in different places. Now, the tendency for any plant or any product of a plant or animal to cause cancer means that material has the tendency to mutate an oncogene and make it become, start unchecked cell division and all of that of a particular cell, and that is what now develops into that tissue. It's not that it has GMO, then it becomes cancer. It's not possible. The right thing should be for any GMO to be approved. There ought to be local researches that would support the decision to approve or not approve the use of such GMOs. One basic reason is the way an organism performs in an environment could be different from the way it will perform in another environment. In one environment, it could be very good and harmless, very safe. But in another environment, because of environmental peculiarities, it could either turn to be very bad and very harmful or unsafe, or it can even be much better and much more safer and all of that, because there is something called genome by environment interaction. You need people to do those researches in the different locations to be able to come up with meaningful conclusions that will help you either to approve or not approve. It's not a matter of, yes, we are now, we have 3 GMOs in Nigeria. Those GMOs, the way they perform in Kaduna, are they the same? Is it the same way it performs in Owerri? Is it the same way it's doing in Calabar? Is it the same way it is safe in Otukpo? What of Ondo? What of Brenin Kebbi? We need to have comprehensive information on these things. And even if they've not done that so far, I don't see any harm in doing those things now, because it's better late than not at all.
Genetically modified is dedicated to a particular quality in crops or animals, the case may be. Yeah, we use them. There's this green rice strain that is basically vitamin A. It's basically purely it has an increased vitamin A quality, and what it means is that science has been able to ensure that particular rice has more vitamin A, and for Now, coming back to livestock, broilers to be precise, you could say there are conventional times. You say agric fowl or agric bird or agric fowl, the broiler and the native birds, the one you see in your backyard. The broilers are basically genetic modified. What has happened there is that they get to maturity, say in 2 months, less 6 months, as against the local birds you have roaming around your premises or your backyard or your communities. That will take, you have to keep them for up to a year and before you could have good meat source from them. Science has enabled us to, for the crop sector, has enabled us to reduce effects of the ecosystem as regards to the use of herbicides. There are some crops that are actually pest and disease resistant. So what science has actually done is that it has reduced the use of pesticide to those particular crops. And thus so far, there are no known scientific, proven scientific research that has come to say that genetic GMOs are not very good for consumption. They are good for consumption. What GMO had done is for better yield and are targeted to improve quality as regards to vitamins and minerals that are supposed to be taken in those crops or animals. There could be possibilities that those vitamins and nutrients are even dormant in those particular crops. So GMO had actually brought up a catalyst system where it's put out for consumption whenever you take them. With GMOs are needed because there is food scarcity down here in the south. So that's one important reason why GMOs are actually encouraged for us to have it here. We must first understand that the cost of what our crops or food items will get down here in the south is because, one, most of them come from the middle belt and the northern belt. So when they come down to this point, the farmers would actually, or the importers bringing it from the north to the south, will actually factor in cost of transportation, the logistics on what challenges they have on the road. And you must also understand that our roads are not even very good. So if down here we could have GMOs, we could have farmers or individuals that could practice GMOs in large quantity, it foretells us that they are good, there's readily food available, and it has covered the gap for food security. And one other thing is what you to notice that for us down here, like we use, like the north, they don't use palm, they don't have palm. We export palm from the north, from the south here down to the north, but they use palm in a very high quantity. So I'm talking about this GMO. Most of the palm plantations we use these days are all improved varieties that we had gotten from Malaysia, and that is now less than 20 months for production. Conventionally, what we had was 4 years and above. So you would see that what GMO had actually done for that particular crop, it has reduced the longevity as regards to the harvesting period. And you also understand that there are some genetic modified activities that happened in tomatoes research and pepper research that also ensure that the post-harvest spoilage is actually reduced, because these are very high perishable crops. So it is not usually very harmful. For tomato and pepper, genetically modified research that be done on it is that rather than having post-harvest spoilage in high quantity in those particular crops, this science had done that, okay, it's going to be drawn a little bit, that okay, if we harvest, for instance, if normally it's supposed to be the normal conventional varieties or species we have, it's going to get spoiled after harvest, say in 5 days. Science has given us an opportunity, okay, rather than getting spoiled in 5 days, it's going to be spoiled, say, after, say, 2 weeks, or that's what science has actually done there. So they are basically not harmful. They have actually brought out some specific qualities in those crops for one to make them very good. For every genetic modified crop, for instance, particular plant, if it gets to maturity, you can harvest up to, say, 20 on a normal crop. Tomato, for instance, normal fruits 20. What science had done on that particular crop is that rather than having 20 now, you may have up to 60. So now at that is the first parent product. So if you go back to replant it, two things that usually happen in GMOs, it's either it reduces by say from 50 to say 40, and mind you, there are some possible crops that in that same case, by the time you replant it, it even gives you a higher product in yield as regards to say 60 fruits, because sometimes replanting also boosts or increases some particular crops quality.